Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Forum Daily West. Here are some of the top stories we have lined up for you tonight. The PM continues to make deals overseas that align Canada more closely with European nations. Plus, a Calgary soldier who went to Ukraine to fight against Russia faces a painful recovery after being burned in a drone attack. And Alberta teachers set to begin 4 days of contract talks with the province after voting in favor of strike action. Thanks for joining us. Prime Minister Mark Carney continues to make deals overseas, deals that would align Canada more closely with European nations. So far, Carney has agreed to work more closely with Poland in areas such as defense, cybersecurity, and clean energy as they struck a new strategic partnership. Today, he met with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and signed a critical minerals partnership that encourages the joint public financing of natural resources projects. Carney says key Canadian minerals such as nickel and cobalt have gone underdeveloped for far too long, while China and Russia dominate the global critical minerals market. And according to political commentator Brian Lilly, this is long overdue, especially since former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said in the past that there was no business case for Canada selling liquefied natural gas to Germany. Lilly says the Liberal Party has now changed its tune simply because of the U.S. president.
You could put it down to two words: Donald Trump. And he has changed everything. And so Canada is now looking and saying, what can we do? Well, of course, our biggest, benefit are all of our natural resources straight across the country. Every part of the country has some form of natural resource that we are really good at exploiting and exporting. Well, Justin Trudeau said there was no business case for selling LNG to Germany when the German chancellor came here and asked for it. So, look, I'm not going to be too hopeful. As with a lot of things with Mark Carney, it's wait and see. So they're going to launch talks to begin discussions about exporting liquefied natural gas, and he's talking about it in the medium term.
You can catch that full interview with political commentator Brian Lilly of the Toronto Sun coming up following business news. And while on the topic of the Prime Minister's European tour, Carney also announced today that Canada plans to buy its next submarine fleet from one of just two suppliers, South Korea's Hanwha or Germany's TKMS.
These both two bidders, and since I'm in Germany, I'll refer to the German-Norwegian consortium, meet all the technical requirements, the capability requirements. That's why we've been able to accelerate the process. There's a clear difference in their ability, the two finalists, to meet those technical requirements, which are very demanding, because in Canada, submarine means weeks under the sea ice, as well as in the Pacific at the same time. So we need to be able to have year-round fleets in all three coasts under quite demanding conditions. So that's how the field narrows quite quickly. So it's a testament to both of these companies, both of these consortium, that they qualify. But the one other element that I would mention, which is, and I know the Chancellor is very conscious of this as well, is that our governments will be spending rightly a great deal of money to make our citizens more secure, to make the world more secure, to work with our allies to make the world more secure. We want to spend that as effectively as possible, so interoperability and cooperation is important, and we want to have the maximum economic benefits in our economies as well.
Carney met with the German sub manufacturers Tuesday and plans to meet with South Korean manufacturers in October. Canada Post lost $407 million before tax in its second quarter as its parcel business fell because of labor uncertainty. That figure is compared with a profit before tax of $46 million a year earlier. The company is in a fresh round of contract talks with postal workers after the employees rejected an offer by the company in a government-ordered vote earlier this year. Canada Post has warned the Postal Service is bleeding millions of dollars in business daily. The proportion of employed Canadian workers from home in May was down compared with a year ago. Stats Canada says those mostly working from home amounted to 17.4% of employed people compared with 18.7% the year before. StatCan says the share of commuters mainly using a car, truck, or van to get to work fell to about 81% in May, down from 2024. Public transit commuters rose to close to 12%, up from the same same period last year. When we return, we'll have more of the top stories from the West with Forum Daily West. The Trump administration has threatened to withhold millions in federal highway funding from certain states if they don't require commercial truck drivers to know English before obtaining licenses. U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order back in April requiring states to enforce this. The threat to withhold funding comes after 3 people were killed in a crash on a Florida highway involving a commercial truck operated by an undocumented driver who entered the country illegally. Harjinder Singh, the California licensed truck driver involved, faces vehicular manslaughter charges and deportation after making an illegal U-turn that caused the accident. The U.S. Transportation Secretary says the 3 non-compliant states are Washington, California, and New Mexico.
And this is not, just to be clear, this is not just about saying we have some obscure rule that we want them to comply with, that truck drivers speak English proficiently. This is about keeping people safe on the road. We all use the roadway, and we need to make sure that those who are driving big rigs, semis, can understand the road signs, that they've been well trained, and that when they're pulled over by law enforcement, they're stopped by law enforcement, or there's a crash and law enforcement responds, they can effectively communicate what they have on their rig. There might be a history that they have to be able to communicate to law enforcement when they're pulled over or there's an accident. And if they can't do that, that creates a significant issue.
Duffy says the department could withhold about $50 million in federal funding if they do not comply within 30 days and could take further actions. The group representing Alberta's teachers is today set to begin 4 days of mediated contract talks with the province. It comes months after the Alberta Teachers Association voted in favor of strike action and just days before students go back to class. Association head Jason Schilling says educators have had enough and the government needs to make a deal addressing all sticking points from wages to classroom resources. Premier Danielle Smith has said Alberta's current funding levels should be enough to address teachers' frustrations, but Schilling does not agree.
No, because we are the least funded in terms of what school boards have to spend on students and have been for years. We are well below the national average. I know the Premier quoted a number yesterday and on Saturday on her radio show, but the reality is it's much less than that. And it's just not enough to cover the growth of enrollment that we've seen, the lack of hiring of teachers over the course of that student enrollment growth. And it's not kept pace. And I think parents and the public can see that in public schools across the province.
Schilling says teachers have only received a 6% increase over the last 12 years. If negotiations fail and teachers go on strike, the Alberta's Parents Union is hoping that there can be a way for kids to still have school in some form. Currently, a Strike-Proof Alberta students petition campaign has been launched. Jeff Park, Executive Director of the Alberta Parents Union, explains more.
The Strike-Proof Alberta students is very simply that if your school is closed due to a teacher strike, you can take the money that the province would be spending on your child to a school that's open. So charter schools, independent schools are not ATA. Well, there's one independent school that's unionized. The rest are non-ATA education institutions. But tutors and online education and maybe a apprenticeship or something like that, something to make sure that children don't fall behind, that it's in the parents' hands to help children not fall behind in the event of a strike.
The parliamentary budget officer says Canada needs to build 3.2 million new homes in the next decade to close the housing gap. However, the PBO says it's not on track to do that. The budget watchdog says it expects about 2.5 million homes will be built over the next decade, which is well shy of its target. It says at the same time, it expects a sharp decline in the number of new households being formed after Canada cut its immigration targets. Well, it is a day of celebration for all the Swifties around the world. Taylor Swift announced on Instagram that she is engaged to NFL player Travis Kelce following a 2-year romance that swept the entertainment and sports world. They made the announcement through a 5-photo joint post on Instagram with a caption that reads, quote, "Your English teacher and your gym teacher are getting married." Kelce was a star tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs and a Super Bowl champion when they met, but Swift's unique level of fame catapulted him into an entirely different orbit. A Calgary soldier who went to Ukraine to help in the fight against Russia faces a painful recovery after being burned in a drone attack on Canada Day. 23-year-old Mac Hughes received burns to nearly 30% of his body. Hughes initially joined his father, Paul, in doing volunteer work in the war-torn nation, but joined the armed forces of Ukraine after a close friend died in the fighting. A year and a half later, his life has completely changed.
A Shaheed came into our position and I was running. I jumped against in between a car and a wall, and the Shaheed exploded about 10 meters away from me. And the car took the bulk of the blast, but it got shifted over onto my foot. Just the tire, like the front tire, just pinned my right foot. And I was awake, and I was like, yeah, I'm alive, cool. And then all of a sudden I went to stand up and I couldn't stand up because my foot was pinned. And I started calling for help, and 2 of my teammates showed up and they tried to lift the vehicle, move the vehicle. But then some of the flammable material from the Shaheed, it mixed with some diesel, got really close, got onto my legs caught fire, my pants caught fire, and at that point I looked at my teammates and I asked them to just shoot me because I didn't want to burn to death.
I never taught him bravery, but that's him, that's all him. He and I have been all over our country and all over Ukraine together, and we're lucky enough as a father-son to have a very special bond. A lot of people don't have that, and the fact that he made a decision to help this country out and was brave enough to even step up to do that, and then how he's been dealing with this very, very severe injury, and the strength that he has, he inspires me. My son inspires me.
Mac Hughes says he has no regrets about fighting for Ukraine and plans to return to the fight when he recovers. Incredible. Here locally, the city of Lethbridge has opened applications today for its Transit Advisory Committee that is returning for the first time since before the pandemic. The goal of the committee is to acquire feedback on the city's transit and paratransit operations. The committee will consist of 2 groups with 12 members each, one group assigned to fixed route service and the other for the Access a Ride service. The city's general manager of transit and transportation says public transit demands in our city have grown at a substantial rate.
We're growing immensely in fixed route transit. So we were 5% increased in the first quarter of 2025. We were actually 10% increase the second quarter of 2025. So we're growing hugely, and that's putting pressure on our buses. So we're trying to accommodate the increased traffic, the increased transit ridership. We know we're totally at capacity with our Access a Ride service, We're doing as best we can to accommodate the needs of the general public with mobility issues, and also our dialysis unit at the Lethbridge Hospital. But we're also constrained by our operating budget. So we're hearing back from the public how we can improve that service.
Online applications can be filled out on the city's website, and printed applications are available at the downtown Park and Ride. Submissions will close on September 30th. Lethbridge police had a very productive weekend, nabbing drivers who were either intoxicated or not driving safely. Over the weekend, an LPS targeted enforcement handed out 83 violation tickets for traffic offenses like speeding, stunting, excessive exhaust or noise, and no insurance. 2 drivers were charged with impaired driving, and 1 suspended driver was also nabbed as part of the ongoing enforcement project. Police remind drivers there is zero tolerance for offenses, and violations will result in tickets. If you're a regular commuter from the city's west side, be aware that crews are back on site at Whoop Up Drive to continue their rehabilitation work. The city of Lethbridge announced that crews will be pouring high-performance concrete for the bridge's expansion joints, and to minimize vibration and ensure integrity, a temporary speed reduction of 30 kilometers an hour will be in effect for westbound drivers. The concrete pour will not impact the peak hour lane changes from 2 to 8 p.m., and motorists are asked to follow all posted signage and exercise caution while crossing.